Welcome to the Law, Your Money, and You. I'm Roberta Saphire, an attorney in Sharon.
And I'm Camille Barron, a financial advisor specializing in asset protection, also here in Sharon. In this show, we bring you important information about legal and financial topics that our viewers like you have asked for. Our expert guests offer their opinions to help you get some practical solutions to some of the questions and issues that you may have.
And today, we are very fortunate to have with us from the Massachusetts Consumer Protection Bureau our guest Diane Lawton, who's the Chief Counsel, and Jason, I always get stuck, Jason Lefferts.
That's right. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Oh, and thank you so much for coming. Diane's the Chief Counsel, and why don't we start right away, huh?
Okay.
What do you do?
Tell us what the Office of Consumer Affairs and Business Regulation does.
Sure. I'm the Director of Communications for the office. We sort of do a mix of consumer advocacy and education and business regulation, as the name would probably let you know. A lot of what we do is working with consumers through their issues, helping them out, giving them the information they need to take care of an issue. And then on the business regulation side, we make sure that there's a level playing field for businesses to operate in, and that helps both consumers knowing that they're dealing with businesses doing the right thing. It also helps businesses so they know that in the competitive marketplace, everyone's working off the same page.
Well, say somebody, I looked online and you have umpteen divisions. Now, one of them is the, like you mentioned before to us about the lemon law. How do people come to you about that?
Well, our agency oversees a number of separate agencies. We oversee the Division of Banks, the Division of Insurance, the Department of Telecommunications and Cable, the Division of Professional Licensure, and the Division of Standards. But directly in our office, we administer the state's Lemon Law program, which is a free arbitration program for folks who have a lemon new or used car. And we also administer the Home Improvement Contractor Program. Just last year, we inherited the registration function. So we register home improvement contractors. We hold hearings if consumers have had problems with them to see if we should discipline them in some way. We also have an arbitration program at a slight fee to arbitrate consumer disputes. And we also administer the state's guarantee fund. You may know that consumers who have had a problem with a contractor and win in arbitration or in court may be eligible to go to the guarantee fund to get back up to $10,000 if they've been unable to recover from the contractor.
Now, does the contractor have to be registered?
The home improvement contractors, anybody who does home improvements needs to be registered, and they register with our office and they pay a fee. They may also, depending on what the scope of what work they do, they may also have to have a construction supervisor's license, which they get at the Department of Public Safety. But part of the fees that the contractors pay to register go into that guarantee fund, so that if consumers have problems with a registered contractor and they win in court or they win in arbitration, then confirm that award in court and can't recover from the contractor either because he's gone bankrupt, left the state, doesn't have any assets, they may be eligible for up to $10,000 in restitution from the fund.
I
What's
never knew that.
the most common complaint about contractors that you're seeing?
One of the more common complaints is they may take a deposit and then never come back. Another common complaint is that, they did something that wasn't what I asked them to do, or they didn't finish the work properly. So we have hearings to see if we should discipline the contractors and either suspend their registrations or assess penalties. But we also have this other process to go to arbitration if you want to see if you can recover money.
Does it cost the consumer anything if they have an issue with a contractor and they want to pursue one of those routes?
Well, the route of a complaint just to see if we can take action against his registration is free. For arbitration, there is a fee a sliding fee depending on the amount of the contracted issue, from $100 all the way up to $850 if the contract's for $50,000 or more. And then the guarantee fund, access to that is free, but you've got to go through the other processes before you can get there.
What if they're licensed but not registered with you?
Well, they have to be registered. In order to pull a permit, you probably know that if you're doing home improvement contracting, most work requires a permit. So to pull a permit, they have to have a registration.
Oh, I never knew that.
And if they have a registration, then you may be eligible to get access to the fund. So they need to be registered to be performing the work.
You might have a rush on that now after the
That's
show.
okay.
Yes.
That would be fun.
Aside from contractors, suppose someone signs a contract with, say, a cell phone company or a burglar alarm company, and they, for some reason or other, either are not satisfied with it, or they think that they might have been misled into the terms or the length of the contract. What recourse do they have?
Well, it depends. What we do is we provide information and referral services for sometimes cell phones. You may be able to get assistance through Department of Telecommunications and Cable. They will try to help folks even though they don't actually regulate cell phone companies. We will also give people advice on, give information. We have booklets and brochures on going to small claims court, writing a 93A demand letter, and we can direct them to additional resources. We don't actually mediate consumer complaints. We give out information and educate the public. For mediation, you would go to the Attorney General's office.
Okay.
And then you mentioned a 93A letter, which I know is unfair and deceptive practice, but I don't think the average person is aware of that. Does that go through you first, Jason?
No, that's, we give the consumer the guidance. I think we have a copy of the letter.
We have a
available
draft
on the website.
form right on our website, or you can get a brochure from us, and it tells you what you should be saying. You know that 93A is the state's consumer protection law, and under the state's consumer protection law, you can sue someone for unfair or deceptive practices, and in order to be able to sue them alleging that claim, you have to send them a letter called the 93A demand letter at least 30 days before you sue them. And that letter allows consumers to set forth what the problem is, to try to get the business to cooperate. If the business responds with an appropriate response, it may very well end there. They may give you a refund, they may fix something. But if they don't, then you can proceed to court. If they didn't respond at all, you may be eligible for double or triple damages. So you have to give them notice of that in the letter, and that's one of the purposes of the letter, is to give them an opportunity to negotiate with you and to let them know that if they don't, you may go forward, seek attorney's fees, and double or triple damages.
Now, when you say sue them, suppose you're in a contract that you want to get out of. So you're not really looking for something other than to get off the hook, so to speak.
Right.
Would you have to follow that same process that you just mentioned, the 93A letter?
No. What we try to do is explain to folks that really what they need to do is talk to somebody above, whoever it was they originally dealt with, to see if there's a way to rescind the contract. There are certain contracts that you have a 3-day right to rescind under Massachusetts law, but they're very, very limited. Timeshares, health clubs, second mortgages, door-to-door sales, and home improvement contracts. You've got 3 days. That's the only time you have a 3-day right to automatically rescind. So the folks who go to a car dealership, buy a car, and then say, wait, I saw it cheaper down the street, and then buy the second one, you just bought 2 cars. You don't have a right to cancel that contract.
You don't have 3 days for an auto?
No. No, you don't. There are very, very limited situations in Massachusetts in which you have a 3-day right. So we'll try to explain to folks that, you may not have a right to do this, but certainly approach the business and ask to speak to the most important person at the business to see if you can resolve it that way. If not, if you think maybe you can get a little more edge by having somebody from a consumer program or the Attorney General's office call them, you can contact that office to see if they'll send it to mediation. But often it's just a misunderstanding. And if you can't afford to pay for something, it doesn't make a lot of sense to try to continue in a contract. So it's best to try to get yourself out of it as quickly as possible, but you don't have an automatic right to it.
Okay.
Do you have special bureaus or programs for not just senior citizens, but for young people too? Do you have different programs, like where you protect the senior citizen? Is it mostly the senior citizens? Do you do it for like students? Do they have any special?
I mean, we'll respond to phone calls from anybody. We do have a special education program for college students right now that the Undersecretary has been doing across the Commonwealth.
Oh, tell us about that.
That's a program called Credit Smarts, and the office will provide someone, most recently the Undersecretary herself, and a couple of students to explain how they got in trouble with credit cards, to explain credit cards and credit and what you might want to think about doing before you get a credit card or take out a loan. And we also usually have a student who will come and tell a sort of sad story about what happened to them when they didn't.
We had an event in
Look before they
Springfield
left.
last week where we had two students speak, and they both ended up dropping out of college the first go around because they had credit problems.
Oh, boy.
One woman is now 31, she's back in school, and she's almost done. And we had a gentleman there who is now at UMass Amherst, and he didn't have crushing debt. It ended up being a couple $1,000s, but he didn't have a job to pay for it. And he was kind of funny. He said, you know, one day his mom called and said, "Honey, bill collectors are calling, looking for you." And he ended up dropping out of school and working for a year to pay off his bills. And then he got back and he went back to college after that.
Don't some of the banks, I remember when my kids went to school, they would just mail them credit cards. You know, I was the one paying it. They mailed them credit cards. But some of the banks at the time were misleading and saying, open up your student account, and when you look at it, it's more charges.
Yeah, a lot of that has
Do
changed
that.
in the last year through the Card Act, the Federal Card Act. Back in the old days, you know, banks and credit card companies could be right on campus, you know, with credit card offer. You know, I went to college 20 years ago, and you couldn't turn around without, you know, tripping on some sort of credit card offer. So that's changed. They can't be on campus any longer, and if you're under 21, you need to have a co-signer or some sort of proof that you can, you know, pay the bill on a regular
That's
basis.
good.
So it's a little bit better from that front. But you know, we know that, you know, according to statistics from last year, the average college student carries over $3,000 in credit card debt. And we figured out that just Boston area college students have over $500 million in just credit card debt. That doesn't include student loans or car loans,
Yeah,
just credit cards. So it's
Student loans, they'll pay till they're
sure,
old.
right, right. But you know, if you're juggling that and credit cards at the same time, you know, I mean, we saw, you know, unfortunately, it's pretty easy for us to find two students who, you know, ran into real problems, you know, just because of credit cards. So we're trying to give them a little education, and you know, the one thing we just hammer away consistently is just pay, if you can't pay the entire balance, you know, every month. And that's a good rule for everybody, but particularly for college students, you know, pay the entire balance every month. Don't get into trouble, because you know, you may make some mistakes now, but you know, 4, 5, 10 years down the road, when you're trying to buy a car or a house, you know, those problems you made in the past, you know, aren't going to go away, and you're not going to be able to buy a car or a house because you ruined your credit when you were in college.
So that's a good program you have.
Yeah, we started it last year, and this is our second year. We had about 1,500 students last year.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
Now, with the new banking laws pertaining to disclosure and credit cards, do you anticipate a lot of activity in that arena?
We're hoping for less.
Yes, we are hoping for less. You know, state chartered banks, you know, are not. Our division of banks oversees state chartered banks, and they've been a little outside of, you know, a lot of the mortgage things that you've seen. And certainly in terms of credit, you know, when you get a credit card, you know, 99 times out of 100, you're getting it from some national bank.
So you don't have anything to do with national banks?
No.
How about credit unions? Those either?
State chartered credit
Oh,
unions.
state chartered
Yes,
credit
ma'am.
unions? And cooperative banks, how's the difference in all these banks?
Depends if they're
Savings banks?
federal or state chartered.
Yeah, it depends on, you know, banks can either be chartered through the state or they can be chartered through the federal government. And if they're state chartered, they fall under the division of banks.
What about an out-of-state bank? You know, where they...
Like a Bank of
on the
America
internet?
or a Sovereign.
Yeah, where they're registered, say a California bank, and they advertise on the internet, and so you bank with them.
That would probably,
Generally
most
be a
likely
national
be
bank.
a federally chartered bank.
Right, which would be under
So that
the supervision of the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency.
I don't know how you do what you do. How many employees do you have there?
We have, we probably have about 50 in our actual office, and then in the agencies, you know, some of our agencies have a couple dozen people, and you know, some of our larger agencies have 200 or 250 people.
Now, you must get an awful lot of complaints about consumer scams. What are some of the more common complaints about consumer scams that you're getting?
Well, The more common complaints about scams most recently have been things like timeshare resellers. You're contacted by somebody who's seen your timeshare listing somewhere and says they'll resell it for you for only a few $100s, but you have to pay up front. Or they'll tell you they already have a buyer, but if you could just wire them the money for the closing costs, you'll get that back after the transaction goes through, plus whatever your profit is. Never, ever, ever, and it's in this field and in anything else, never, ever, ever respond to a call out of the blue that tells you that you've won something, that somebody's got something that they can sell on your behalf, and but you have to pay them up front, or you have to give them your bank account number or your credit card number. That stuff is stuff you should hide somewhere in your house and never give out unless you've initiated the contact.
It's amazing how educated business people fall for that.
Absolutely, and I know that there have been business people who get invoices that look like it might be something that they ordered, and they'll pay it because it sounds familiar. It sounds like something they've paid in the past, and the person in the office says, "Oh, yeah, I think we've done that," and they'll pay it. And then it's only later that they find out that it's a sound-alike. It isn't the company they dealt with before. It's somebody that isn't offering a service that they would actually use. There was a company a few years ago that sent bills yellow print on white, so it was hard to see that it wasn't really an invoice, but it looked like an invoice, and it led you to believe it had the little walking finger symbol on it.
The Yellow
So it
Page
led
one.
you to believe that it was the Yellow Pages, and they used a variation of the name Yellow Pages. And businesses paid those bills thinking, okay, that's my Yellow Pages listing.
Oh, boy.
Well, it wasn't. It was for a national directory, and
Yeah.
Betty's Poodle
I
Parlor
get
and
those.
Cranston, Rhode Island doesn't need to be nationally listed because people from California aren't going to send their poodles to Betty. So it was a directory that really didn't.
There's
was
another
useless.
one we got. We have a business, and you give them your credit card. So in this case, it was American Express, and we tell them, charge it automatically. Well, the thing is, you start after a few years go by, and you started looking at your bills. You go, what is this for? Well, they were
Right.
just charging automatically, and meanwhile, you don't do business with them anymore. So
Right.
people should watch out. Do you have that too, where they just
Yeah, just read your statements. You may think that you've gotten a sample offer and you've only bought one, but you somehow enrolled for a club, and the item comes every month or the bill comes every month, and it's not something that you remembered having done. And if you read the fine print of whatever was sent to you in the mail, you find out, oh wait, it's automatically renewing. But you didn't know that because you didn't really, that wasn't what you thought you were getting into. So it's very important to read your credit card statements because you've only got 60 days from the time you get your statement to, dispute it.
Another one we see in that sort of vein is a lot of times for like diet pills, you can get a free trial offer for 2 weeks, and they want your credit card number in advance so they can pay. So you have to pay for shipping and handling for the first thing, and it ends up being like $80 a month for this diet pill. And if you read the fine print, it's 2 weeks from the date you ask for it. So they wait, so you get it like 2 days before the 14 days, and then you don't. And you have to opt out, and if you don't opt out, they actually charge you for that free trial period and then start billing you every month.
Well,
So you
sometimes
can end
it
up,
should-
$150 in the hole before, you've even taken a pill in some cases.
Isn't shipping and handling sometimes more than the product is worth?
Occasionally.
Do that too?
Yeah.
Are you seeing more and more of a requirement, though, that they don't have to opt out, that the companies have to have you opt in rather than have you opt out if you don't want something? It seems fair to do it that way. Is that happening?
Not that we've seen so much. It's just that people may, they may listen to a sales pitch but not look at the documents that they get in the mail, and so it may have gone past them really quickly that they were enrolling in something. So you've really got to read anything that's sent to you. It used to be American Express, and other credit card companies would give you offers that you really, protection on your account. Maybe you didn't want, it's free for the first month. Maybe you didn't want protection, but oh look, after the first month, You still have it because you didn't
What
you
about
didn't cancel during the cancellation
what about some of
period.
those emails that we get about credit score monitoring? You know, the one on TV.
Mhm.
There's one or more on TV. It's free supposedly,
Mm.
but I don't think it's free, is it?
Right.
No.
No, it's only-
The credit report is actually free.
Yeah.
But you're signing up for a monthly security service. That's like $10 a month, I think. And that's one actually that we talk about at Project Credit Smarts, because that's the one with the band.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's pretty popular. But buried in the fine print is when you sign up, you're paying $10 a month for a credit security watch.
They have
service.
some free once a year.
Yes, if you go through
Yes.
the three credit bureaus, you can get a free report once a year, and that is actually free. I don't know the website off the top of my head. Do you?
You can just go to any one of the three credit, Experian, TransUnion, and who was the third one? Darn.
Oh,
But any under state law and now finally
Choice
under
Point.
federal law.
Is Choice Point one of
Is
them?
that the one of the new ones?
One of the
Yes, that
things
we're
we
allowed to-
wanted to bring up, because we only have a few minutes left, is
Sure.
identity theft, which
Mhm.
is becoming more and more popular.
Unfortunately.
What kinds of identity theft that comes before you?
We usually may get a call about it's hard to find out about identity theft. One of the reasons that you should look at your credit card statement very closely every month is because you'll find charges that you didn't put on there. So check that. But identity theft can come from obscure things where people pick up your stuff, pick up your mail, go dumpster diving. It can also sometimes happen if the credit card slip that when you're charging something in a store, if somebody makes a copy of that. So federal law changed a couple of years ago to require that your credit card slips only have the last 5 digits on there, so they don't have all of that
very important.
information. And we also have regulations that require folks who have personal information of Massachusetts consumers to keep it secure.
Now, with regard to the identity theft, is shredding the primary way to protect yourself against that?
Shredding and getting a crosscut shredder, because you can reassemble
Yeah.
those little tiny
Yeah.
strips. So get a crosscut shredder. Shred all those offers for credit cards that come to your house, because somebody else could pick that up and divert it and say their address has changed, but they're you. And so you want to make sure that you get rid of all of that stuff too. And you can also, as you were talking about, opt out of pre-approved credit card offers.
Now, do you also take any complaints about energy companies? Because there's so many different energy companies now.
Yeah, that one's actually more the purview of the Division of Public Utilities, which is outside of our agency, actually. They were in the Office of Consumer Affairs until 5 or 6 years ago, I think.
How about phone companies, all the different phone companies?
Yeah, that's the telecommunications and cable, which is part of our office. I think for the most part, the majority of complaints they get is in terms of cramming. That'll be when some sort of charge magically appears on your phone bill from a third party. Sometimes that happens when I think we've all been online where you've seen an IQ score, an IQ test.
Oh, I
And,
got stuck in that
Yeah,
one.
and they say,
This is
we'll
from my granddaughter.
we'll send
and I
you
couldn't get rid of
your
it.
score. We'll text you on your phone your score, so you give them your text number. What you're signing up for is some sort of update. A lot of times it's like entertainment news updates, and all of a sudden your phone is getting crushed with all these stupid entertainment news updates, but you're also being charged, some sort of, a fee for every text or a monthly fee for that. And you don't know until the next month when the fee pops up on your bill.
How about the phone companies that we're well aware of, without mentioning their names, that you sign up for a phone, they give you a free phone for a 2-year contract, and then all of a sudden your first bill comes and you see, or your second bill or your third bill, you start looking at it, and it's all these extras that you never signed up for.
Yeah, that's something that we've looked at a lot in a couple of different telecommunications industries. Sort of, you see that sort of number on the TV screen or in an ad, and you think that's what you're going to pay. And we just did something with cable in particular, where we looked at sort of all that, the box fee and the DVR fee and extra channels and all that stuff. And they may be saying it's going to cost you $90 a month, and you get that first bill, and it's $120. And sort of this is how you get from 90 to 120.
One last question, because we're getting close to having to wrap up. But what about the do not call regulation? I know a lot of people have put their numbers into that.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I've also heard recently, I think, that cell phones are also going to be subject to these telemarketing calls.
That's actually one of those urban myths that's been out there for a long time. There is a state do not call list and a federal do not call list. They tend to cover the same ground, but I would register with both. Never hurts. The problem
Learning a
is
lot.
that, and you can register your cell phone as well as your landline if you have a landline. There isn't any list of cell phones. There's no cell phone directory. And so if you get a call on your cell phone, it's probably either because you've put it somewhere on an application and somebody's gotten hold of it, or because somebody's using a robot machine to dial every sequential number. And a couple of months ago, the Federal Trade Commission went after the company that was calling everybody all over the country telling them that their car warranties had run out.
Oh,
Oh, I got that
Yeah.
one too.
I got too
Yeah.
many of those
Yeah.
things.
I
There are
asked them
tons
which
of
car
those.
it covered, and they never got back to me.
Yeah, they made it up. It was a couple
Yeah.
of scammers in a couple of states, and the Federal Trade Commission sued and got them put out of business.
Well, we want to thank you for coming.
Sure, thank you.
And
Thank you for having
we'd
us.
like to invite you to stay with us. We're going to do our You've Got to Be Kidding
Oh,
segment,
great.
which
Thank
I
you.
was saving what you told me, one of your scams.
Our favorites.
Your favorite scam that you told us before we sat down, and I'd like you to tell that for our
Okay.
viewers.
Sure.
Sure.
All right.
I think it was about the grandmother.
Yeah, our favorite newest scam. It's unfortunate because it takes advantage of seniors, and it takes advantage of seniors who may not be completely with it, because someone will call. Usually they call. Sometimes they show up at the door, but usually they call and say that they are either calling for your grandchild, nephew, whatever, or they are your grandchild, nephew, or whatever, and they're in trouble. And they need you to wire them X number of dollars. And so grandma, trying to help, will wire the money to the place that they are told to wire the money to, not realizing that grandson is actually, with mom in the next state. He's not in trouble in England. He's fine.
Yeah,
and
at
so,
this point
and
I say, you've got to be kidding.
yeah, it's like, don't you know where your grandson is? So it's a tough one.
Well, I've even seen those with emails, not just phone calls.
Yeah.
In fact, in the past year, I've received 2 of those myself
Really?
from people who were friends. And
But you're not a grandma.
I'm not a grandmother. I hope not anyway. But these were people who were friends, and fortunately, I was wise enough to forward that on to those friends, and of course,
Yeah.
they confirmed it wasn't real. But like you say, when you have people who might be a little bit naive, or someone older who really can't think things through that well, it is really
It's a
quite a
real problem.
concern. So what's your advice to people?
My advice to people is, if somebody asks you to wire them something for any reason, it's probably not your best way of dealing with business, because once it's wired, or once you put something on an ATM, card, a debit card, it's gone. And often the places that you're wiring it to may be out of the country, and no one will be able to recover it for you.
Okay, good. Well, with that, we want to thank you for sharing.
Thanks very
There's
much.
probably so much more. But what's your website, so in case people want more information?
At www.mass.gov/consumer.
Okay, that's easy enough.
Oh, that
All
is.
right.
You want to
Yep.
give your phone number too?
The hotline number is 287-3757. 888-287-3757.
Great.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Now we're going to go to our emails, and one person sent in for our You've Got to Be Kidding segment where a bear chased after this woman, and she got in her house, and it was like knocking at the door and everything, and she grabbed the first thing she could and started bopping him on the head with it, and he ran away. It was a zucchini.
You've got to be kidding.
and oh, well, we got to wrap up, but there's another. I don't know if this is a scam or not, but somebody who was visiting, they sent us their link to someone in North Carolina, and apparently this Salinger who wrote The Catcher in the Rye, someone said that they had a toilet that belonged to him, and they were trying to sell it. So,
Talk about a scam.
yeah. So with that, we're winding up. Send us your emails. We need them. Let us know what you want us to talk about. If you need any more information on the Consumer Protection Division, email me and Camille, and we'll
Get in touch.
get our folks here deluged with
Yes.
emails.
So remember, this is your show. The law, your money, and you.